identify the downside. How bad could this get for energy markets, or how bullish could this be for oil?
Look, I think, the situation remains extremely fluid, right? Given the military escalation that we warned about yesterday as well. I think part of it is because the market was quite complacent. A lot of traders we were speaking with were very much of the view that, Putin would basically end whatever was happening at Donbass and wouldn't go in. And I think part of the reaction you're seeing from the market is exactly that miscalculation, or at least underestimating the risks around this. Now, right now, the price is a number. It can go to any level, genuinely. We could be at 110 by the end of today for Brent, right? Because this is about the fear. Now, we understand still, even as the West will impose more sanctions on Russia, which is they've already articulated that if Russia were to go beyond Donbass, there will be more sanctions. It will still not include energy sanctions. By that, I mean prompt energy supplies. Future projects, Nord Stream 2, that's very different. That can absolutely be on the cards. But if prompt energy supplies aren't going to be affected, this isn't a loss of supplies. But that doesn't mean that you're not going to get fears or just the fear of potential disruption, buyers just being wary of sanctions and staying away. You've already seen Urals, the Russian benchmark, come off massively in price. Asian buyers are buying it because they are less risk averse. European buyers aren't. So the disruption, or rather I would say the fear of sanctions, can really cause significant supply trade flow, I would say, changes rather than supply outages.
So Amrita, as we watch oil prices right now on the screen next to you and in our tickers below, we are seeing sharp rises to prices. Supply is an issue here. What do you think could happen in response from other oil-producing countries, other big oil exporters around the world? I say this because Russia is obviously very much a huge energy producer, but the U.S. is the biggest producer out there for hydrocarbons. We also have OPEC, partner country with Russia in many of these supply issues that we've seen over the last several years. What exactly do then other oil-producing countries do, possibly in response, or are we waiting to see what actual sanctions are being proposed by governments around the world?
That's absolutely correct. It's the latter. Because, again, there has been no supply disruption. And I do want to really underline that point. There are fears of supply disruption, but until and unless there's an actual supply disruption, OPEC Plus is unlikely to react. OPEC Plus has already been under pressure from the U.S. government to try and increase production above and beyond the 400,000 barrels per day. But they have absolutely said we're going to stick to plan. And you've recently heard ministers there also say that should there be a supply disruption in Russia, OPEC Plus doesn't even have the spare capacity to compensate for it. But again, right now, there's no supply disruption. I think the second point that you're making, again, about the U.S., production will always take longer to react. There are months, potentially years of lead time around the world. U.S. could be months. Where I think you could get more supply right now is strategic petroleum reserves, so SPRs. The problem is the U.S. is already releasing SPR, if you remember back in November, and we understand that they are pretty much maxed out in terms of the capability of how much they can release in terms of the infrastructure available. Sure. So we don't think the U.S. can necessarily push out more oil from the SPR before June. The IEA, again, will wait for an actual supply disruption before it reacts.